Well, I am so excited to be here again. My name is Denise Montgomery. I want to thank Authors Marketing Guild for just allowing me this opportunity. I too am a retired teacher, but I retired and I didn't have enough of it, so I came back and I'm teaching GED now. So I teach GED classes part time, and I do a little bit of everything. My friends say I have a tendency to put my hands in too many pots, but I enjoy working in the community. I enjoy working for causes. I began writing when I was a little girl, about I would say around 8 or 9 years old. It wasn't that I was trying to write. Basically, I used to break out every summer in a allergy. I would just break out with sores. And I don't know too many kids that want to deal with a kid with sores on. So it drove me in the house. And I would stay in the house all summer long and I would write because my hands were were infected or whatever. My grandmother would put these ugly Michael Jackson gloves on that nobody would play with it. But little did I know that that was setting me up for something else. Because as I would sit in the house alone and by myself, I began reading. And the more I read, the more I wanted to read. And the more I read, then I wanted to start writing. So it all worked together for my good. And even at, I would say about around 10 or 11 years old, the my seat, this, I guess I wasn't allergic to summer anymore, so I could get out. But I didn't want to then. I had found a love for writing, and I realized that writing took me on adventures. So I used to write all these poems, and if I knew where they were now, I would be a millionaire. But I don't know exactly where I put them. They just went someplace. So in 2008, I started realizing that I started hearing these voices in my head. And I didn't know how you think you hearing voices, you thinking something's wrong. And I just, pretended like I never told anybody about it. And I just started hearing what these people were saying to me. And I realized that these were characters that were telling me stories. So that brings about my first book. My first book was Farmer Brown and Lady Madeline, the children's story. I published it in 2012, and then I bought it. It didn't work out, so I just republished it. And I'm so excited. If I could, I'd run around this room. I republished it. It's available now. The same storyline, but I just changed it so it was more kid friendly. It's about a farmer and his wife. They're a loving couple, and they haven't quite figured out how to get kids to the farm. They have a huge farm with all of these loving animals, and they just want children. So they seek the advice of an owl. Owls can be a little sneaky at times, and they can be a little tricky at times, especially when you wake them up. And we know owls are nocturnal. So Farmer Brown and his wife, to say the least, they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer. So they go and see the owl who tricks them. And you go through a lot of adventures. It's a wonderful children's story. As I said, I'm a teacher, and I've always been for the cause of children being well treated. So basically, this is a story that I think young people, anybody, any age, would enjoy. Again, I republished it, and I'm so excited. It's available on my website. It will be available at Indie Lecture, and it's also available on Amazon. Well, time went on, and I kept hearing voices again. And this time the voices were in Arkansas. I hadn't been to Arkansas at that time. I didn't have a clue about Arkansas. I just knew it was there. So, but I started hearing these stories about a young woman. Her name was Emily. And the characters got so good, y'all, they started telling me their names. So Emily told me, my name is Emily. And I'm going through a whole lot. So by this time, I've learned, okay, when they start telling me stories, I need to write them down. So I started writing down what Emily was saying. And Emily's story became another book. The name of the book is The Blessing. Um, the Blessing is a story of a young woman. Her father and her mother are dysfunctional. So she comes from a dysfunctional family. And most of us know you marry what you live with. So in her attempt to get away from her father's dysfunction and his abuse, she moves to Arizona, where she just finds him again. But this time it's in the form of a husband named Jeff. And she and Jeff go through ups and downs, ins and outs. But she winds up back in Arkansas where she started. And her life begins a cycle of violence and hunger and poverty. But through it all, perseverance. She never gives up. It's a story. It's a story of abuse and how she triumphed in the end. I use this book to work with. I work with a lot of domestic violence shelters, and at some one point in time, I was using the book to benefit the shelters. I was giving the proceeds, part of the proceeds from the sale of the book, to shelters. I would still very much enjoy doing that. So if you're a shelter out there and you want a way to do fundraising, please hit me up. I would love to do that again. I wrote this book. This one also came out in 2012, and again, it's called The Blessing. It's a lovely story. It's a heartwarming story, and I think it's a story a lot of people can relate to. Well, time goes on, and I continue to write. My next book, it came out in 2015. I based this story basically when I was growing up. You wouldn't look at it, you wouldn't think it to look at it, but I was very rebellious when I was growing up. I'm this calm, cool person now, but especially in my young adulthood, when you move away from your house, you're determined that your mother can't tell you anything. So I remembered that time, and I wrote a book about it, and the name of the book is The Setup. The Setup is a story of a young girl. Her name is Marie. Marie turns 21, and I know 20 years, 21 has been forever with me. But I remember that time of being out. I wanted to be out on my own. I wanted to do exactly what I wanted to do. So such is the case with Marie. She decides I'm 21 years old and can't nobody tell me nothing. So she goes out on a night on the town, her and her friend, and she meets this tall, dark, handsome man. And when she looks at him, she says, "He's a dark glass of wine that I just gotta have a taste of." Well, everything look good ain't good, you know. So Marie finds out that she's bitten off more than she can chew, and it takes it. But little did she know that the situation that she was going through, her mother was going through things, and Marie's situation and her mother's situation was a setup for things to come together. And they both reveal the secrets that have been hidden for a number of years. It's a wonderful story, another story of perseverance and triumph and things that we have to get over. And my latest baby is one of my favorite books. Um, I grew up in Dallas, lived here all of my life. I love to travel, but I end up coming right back here. So I grew up in the 60s, and during the 60s, much of Dallas was still segregated. Uh, one thing in particular was the State Fair of Texas. So I remember being in one of Alan's conferences in Houston a few years ago, and a publisher walked up to me and he said, "You haven't told the story you need to tell." And he said, "This is the story you need to tell." So I remember it was 1965. I'm telling my age. I was standing in my mother's living room, and I was looking out the window. It was this African Americans or people of color. We had one day that we could go to the fair, and that was the second Monday in October. And if you missed that day, too bad. You had to wait till the next day. Well, y'all know what happened. The second Monday in October, it rained. So I'm standing in my mother's living room, and I'm looking out the door, and I'm going, "I want to go. I want to go." Such is the name of the book. I want to go. And I remember standing there crying, and my grandmother, she called me Lisa, and she said, "Baby, Lisa, we'll go next year." Well, you can't explain to a 10-year-old, why can't I go this year? And she kept saying, "When you get older, baby, you'll understand." I never did. I mean, as time went on, I began to understand, but that memory haunted me. Even as I realized what was going on, it haunted me. So when I was at this conference in Houston, he said, "You need to write the book that she needs to write." And I just started boo-hooing. I'm going, "Okay, I guess I do need to write this." So it was based on my childhood experience, but it is a fiction novel. Her name is Renee. That's Renee, y'all. Renee wants to go to the fair. And I tell it from the standpoint of Renee's adventures. There's a lot of historical facts. Dr. Martin Luther King walking over the bridge in Selma, Rosa Parks sitting on the bus, the riots out in LA. So it's not, I bring in a lot of flavor of the time. And I think children, well, basically children of all ages should be able to enjoy it. And I just loved writing it, to getting it. I don't have to cry anymore because I got Renee's story out. And I'm so excited. This book is available on Indie Lecture. All of my books will be available on Indie Lecture. And they're also available on Amazon. Please, please go to my website, DeniseMontgomery.org. I have book trailers, and I have, if you want to see more about the books, and I would just love to hear from you. Leave me a comment. I have a Facebook page. It's also Denise Montgomery. And I would just appreciate hearing from you. I love, as you can see, I love to talk. That's never been my problem. So I just would love to interact with you and get to know you. And I would be thrilled to be able to come out and present my books at a book club. So hit me up. I would just love it. Thank you so much, Alan, for giving me this time.
Thank you for watching. Please join us at our next virtual book festival held every 3 months. Learn more at bookfestival.network. Sponsored by Authors Marketing Guild, Indie Beacon Show, Authors Marketing Event, and the B4R.store.